All right, good afternoon. To our audience here in person and online, welcome to this panel on generative AI and public safety. We thank you so much for tuning in from wherever you are or for listening to us. And to the audience in person, thank you for being here today. I am Ben Haiman and serve as the Executive Director of Public Safety and Justice for the University of Virginia and have the great pleasure of running the Center for Public Safety and Justice. Today I'm joined by three colleagues who I'll let introduce themselves. We'll then go through a panel discussion and invite a period of question and answers towards the second half, both for those that are in person and those that are online. So as you're hearing the conversation today, think about some questions, some real stumpers of questions that you can throw out to our esteemed panelists. With that, I'd like to start to my left, introduce a retired Captain Eric Smith. Eric.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Smith. I'm a retired captain, recently retired in May of this year with the Richmond Police Department. That's in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. In my role there, I was responsible and involved with a lot of administrative duties, personnel, and then equipment, supplies, vehicles, and a lot of technology pieces for the organization.
Hello, my name is Daniel Francis. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Able Police. What our first product does, Able Riders, it takes police body cam footage and it turns it into police reports. And we're doing a few other things in the AI space for policing as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Parham. 33 years in public service. Retired as a police chief in Linden, New Jersey. Went on to a county sheriff's office as an under sheriff. Worked for a prosecutor's office as a director of policy and training. Then went on to Broadway Police Department as their director, and finally they got tired of throwing me out of places, so they let me land as a business administrator. Did that for several years, and I recently retired from all government work, where I'm just now working on using AI and helping people to learn about it and to figure out how to problem solve with it. So pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, I want to just start with a quick poll of those that are in the room and those that are online. You're welcome to participate along, but who here uses any form of generative AI on a routine basis? Just quick show of hands. So I see a few that come up. Online, I'm sure we're looking at your hands there too. So briefly, we're going to start with a couple different themes in today's conversation, but the first is really what is generative AI and how is it being used? Daniel, I want to turn to you first and really get an understanding. You have a deep experience in the space of technology. What is generative AI and how is it different than other forms of technology that public safety leaders might have experienced in the past?
Generative AI, a lot of things that are called AI are more accurately described as machine learning. They're recognizing patterns from having been trained on a very large data set, and after a while, a statistical model can begin to detect patterns and match them up. And so the most common thing that's been around for years in policing is facial recognition. We can take someone who robbed a liquor store, take their face and match it against a database and potentially match them just based on that. A lot of things that you use inherently have this in it, a lot of fingerprinting stuff and stuff like that has machine learning built into it. The difference with generative AI is that instead of just doing category matches or like matches, it's actually producing content. And this, of course, is completely magical the first time you see it. It's totally stunning. And so it's able to write, it's able to give you a poem written like a pirate about your pet dog. It's able to do any of this stuff. And that is obviously a sort of, it's in this realm of machine learning, but it's a radical departure from what we saw before. And I think the entire world recognizes that now.
Jonathan, want to pivot to you just briefly here. As you've been in government, if you've been in public safety and law enforcement specifically, the term generative AI or AI is getting thrown around a lot. What are you seeing are some of the adoption cases or use cases? Are agencies really using generative AI right now, or are they using systems that are just really technology instead of generative AI?
I don't think that, certainly in New Jersey, in the organizations that I've been around, I don't think that they've progressed to using generative AI. think they're at the point where ChatGPT is still this master of a mystery to them, and they're able to make workout plans and recipes and things of that nature, and they find it to be impressive, and they're still trying to wonder how it can help them. And we are seeing a lot of concern about privacy, things of that nature. So the fear is there, and when it comes to people's private information, you don't want to get that wrong. So the movement in law enforcement, and specifically in government, especially where I am, is extremely slow. It's just not happening fast because of people are risk averse, and risk averse in addition to not understanding what the terminology is, understanding how things work, how LLMs are created and trained in those nature. That, and I'll call it ignorance, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, that level of ignorance creates that slowing down process and that impediment to progress.
Thanks. I want to come back and talk a little bit about some of the training that is available or not available to public safety leaders and some of the gaps there. Captain Smith, if you want to share a little bit about your experience with frontline officers experiencing some of these AI tools and any success stories that you've seen or hesitation that you've seen from frontline personnel.
Sure, so I think it's both. Police officers, cops, sheriff's deputies, they all want something to change, and then when we change it or implement some change, they push back on what we see. And I see a lot of smiles around the room, and we all know exactly what that means. So that being said, and then there's when you look at the workforces that we have a lot of seasoned officers and deputies, and we have a lot of younger. And so the younger generation is definitely more willing to try out and familiar with the terms that we use when they talk about AI. Some that have gone to college are all very aware of what it is and how to use it. And so what we found is they're using it anyway. They're using a third-party source that maybe we do or don't want them to do. And so giving them a tool to use to be more effective in their response is great, and they're willing to do it. Some of the more seasoned personnel aren't as excited about using a new tool, or they will respond like, well, I don't write that many reports anyway. Maybe they should write more. That's another question and topic. But the people that I've spoken with that are currently using this technology in their day-to-day operations, most are very amazed by it and how quickly it creates the information that they need, that they can go give a review, maybe add 2 or 3 sentences or maybe a paragraph if necessary, and submit a report and be complete. One person I spoke with actually last week said that they never clear a detail unless there's a priority detail until their report is submitted for approval. And they do that from the field. So the advances in technology to allow that have been really big and moving quickly. And he's constantly caught up throughout the course of his day. Some other officers hold reports towards the end of the shift, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having this tool. So then they have to wait to do it at the end. And he just, throughout the course of his day, is constantly caught up and moving. And if I go back to when I was an officer taking reports, we used dictation. I would call in the report, cell phones still weren't that great. And so they would recommend that we use a hard line to call in these reports. So I would call them in from victims' homes. Hey, can I use your phone real quick? Sure. Call it in and kind of the same thing comparing to this newer officer who uses it in the field with his body cam footage. And I would call in a report, and then when I would clear, I would be available and ready to go to the next call or do whatever I wanted to do. He does the same thing with the use of this technology, which has been really good. And there are more and more officers getting more familiar with the system and being more comfortable where they use it on everything. Every call they go to, they'll use the technology to help draft the report that gets submitted. So I see a big shift with the younger generation who's coming on now who embrace this technology and are willing to try it out. And then, getting someone that's on a supervisory promotional list to try out new technology is always a good person to lean on because they want to make themselves noticed. But getting the buy-in of people to do it seems a lot easier with our younger officers.
I think that could be said about many different aspects of change within public safety organizations. Jonathan, I want to pivot back to you for 1 second. And really, if you had to paint a picture for us of 2035 or 2040, where are some of the areas that you see in policing in particular, or public safety more broadly, where generative AI has just tremendous applications? Captain Smith was talking a bit about report writing, and we'll dive into that because I think that's a very immediate and practical need for so many different agencies. But what else do you see on the horizon that's out there?
Well, I mean, the opportunities and the options are endless. I can throw out a few that we've been working on, and one of them is training. Training in any sense can be enhanced when you're using generative AI. The fact that you can have role play that understands contextually what that incident that they're talking about is, and I'll give a great example. We developed a ChatGPT bot to do role play with our dispatchers, and when we programmed the bot, we wanted it to be able to recreate the different types of emotions. So instead of if the role play that we're going through is there's a mother who's missing her child, well, she's not going to be speaking to you calmly. She's going to be yelling, she's going to be incoherent, you're going to have to calm her down, all of those. We built in all of those things, and now instead of taking that dispatcher off the road or sending them or getting backfilled or paying overtime, you can take them out of their seat for half an hour and drill them, keep track of those drills, and then test their ability to respond and then put them right back on the road. So it's not just that there are more things that you can do, it's that it doesn't disrupt your daily business as much as trying to replace that person or that opportunity with a full day training session. I mean, the report writing, without a doubt, and I just want to add something that I think is really, really critical to the report writing, and we talked about this earlier. Bad reports deny justice. It's just as simple as that. A bad report can't be followed up by a detective, can't go to the prosecutor's office for review, can't create a case, can't create the opportunity for justice for the victim. Bad reports deny justice. It is that important for us to use as many tools as we can to improve report writing so that we can improve the product that we put out there, which in turn improves the opportunity for justice. Training and dispatch, promotional exams, we've created bots that have allowed people to study for their promotional exams, but not just the content, it's how you study. So we all study differently. Maybe I'm an auditory learner, maybe I'm a visual, maybe I'm a hands-on learner. Maybe I only have 15 minutes every few hours to do this. Programming in those bots to say, we're gonna give you 5 questions on your criminal law, and then we're gonna ask you those questions. And then what we're gonna do is the ones that you get wrong, we'll put them in a little box, and then the ones that you get right, we don't need to go back to them. We can go back to the ones you get wrong at the end of the week. Having an understanding of how much you can change or augment the learning experience is probably one of the best things. The opportunities are limitless, but the learning experience, man, understanding how we learn, the best ways we learn, catering something to a person's learning style, I mean, just endless opportunities there.
What about in the intelligence space?
Cool.
Do you mind just adding a bit on that piece? And then I want to follow up. I want to follow up with Daniel then briefly on just a little bit kind of in detail with some of the opportunities that you were just talking about.
Sure. So for Intel, I'll give you an example. We had a case of catalytic converters, and everyone's seen that. Catalytic converters are getting stolen, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. We're doing the best we can, putting out details. And what we found that we were doing, which is what we did in almost every case, was we were taking reports and treating them all as one-offs. There's another burglary, there's another catalytic converter theft, there's another this. And what we're able to do now is take all of those reports, feed them into the AI, and look for trends. What's the trend in the date? What's the trend in the reporting time? What's the trend in the type of vehicle? What's the trend in whatever it is? And then use that to sort of backtrack and look at our suspect list, look at other things that we had going on. The idea is that we don't have to now take all of this content and just look at it as one-offs. And it requires, here's the caveat, it requires you to really look at it. Now you can take a look at all this stuff holistically and say, what are the patterns? What's going on? Here is the warning, human in the loop. This is a dangerous tool and it's a wonderful tool at the same time. Dangerous because if you just let it do its thing, it's going to lie to you, it's going to make things up, and it's going to make you look like a fool. So don't do that. But wonderful is if you're a subject matter expert and you know your job, then you can scrutinize the output or the outcome or even the training of it or the structuring of that so that it produces what you want to produce so that it's usable and it's customized to you.
Thank you. So this morning, I had the pleasure of chatting, Daniel, learning a few things from you about this. And one of the things that I heard, and I'm hoping you can speak more of, is the opportunity for AI to have, if I'm a police officer, respond to the scene of something. I'm listening, I'm watching, and I have kind of one point of view. But through generative AI pieces, there's a lot of different data sources that can come in to what then becomes a generated police report. Can you speak a little bit about the technical capacities of systems and of generative AI technology to pull in, you know, a more holistic sense of justice to what Jonathan was speaking about, in order to, you know, to have different viewpoints, to have different data sources? And what are some of those different types of streams that can come into this technology, more than just words?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, there's a lot of things that we can pull from. And so obviously, our biggest, well, not obviously, but our biggest thing is CAD. Hooking up the dispatch systems, getting better context there. But also it's, and we can also grab, security footage that gets submitted and things like that to supplement. There's a lot of benefits of getting different streams of data and collating that into a single report or a single narrative. But the funniest thing that we see in the field is, and I do a lot of ride-alongs, I'll go with officers to a call, something will happen, it'll be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, a lot of words were exchanged. We get back in the vehicle, they start to see the report come out and they pause for a second and they're like, wait, did he say that? And they go look at the transcript, they click on it, it goes to that part of the video and they're like, wait, he did say that. A lot of times, if you're an officer in the field, you've got like a lot of things going on in your mind. And there's a lot of physical security things that you have, there's a lot of things, and you're in charge of investigating something. On top of that, you're securing a site and you're investigating. And a lot of times you're with people who may not be the most compliant people, you may be feeling in danger, there's things going on. The ability of AI to give you a perspective on what you yourself experienced and say and point out things that occurred. The most surprising thing about the product to me is seeing that in the field. So yeah, there's lots of data that we can pull from, and I'm not sure if I'm hitting exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so if you can kind of, yes, but can you pivot a bit into different ways? So you can get words, you can get video input. Talk to us about
certainly.
Some of the different methods of AI learning.
Yeah, so we are really blessed that we quickly grew into a multimodal situation with our models. Originally, ChatGPT 3.5, it was just text. And now our video comprehension abilities are incredible. And so that's technology that my company relies on and leverages a lot, is the ability to actually understand, and already products that came out are already getting like dusted by this. So like originally, probably you guys are familiar with Draft 1. Draft 1's idea was it was gonna take transcripts and turn it into narratives. And the ability to understand people on the screen, describe them and describe the actions that they take, even back then, 2 years ago, seemed like sci-fi, and that's now totally possible. And so the ability to comprehend video, comprehend pictures, we take in images as well. If they submit, officers submit images to their digital evidence management system. A lot of times in DVs and commercial burglaries, things like that, images come across that we can then describe and add that information to the report. The ability to write a really, what we call a 95th percentile narrative at this point is like well within our grasp. And just a year ago, we were kind of hackers for doing this. Like it was kind of an insane thing to do. And at this point now we write better reports than police.
All right, so I want to ask a question, probably either to Jonathan or Daniel on this piece, but talk to us about what are LLMs, how do they work, and why are they important for this generative AI concept?
Yeah, so LLMs are generative AI. We had been through what they were calling like the AI winter for decades, basically, trying to figure out what kind of breakthrough we could get to bring us closer to the sci-fi vision of AI. And it turns out all you need is just an insane amount of data. And so he started training large language models using GPTs, the type of transformer architecture, to basically become next token predictors. And so in the same way that, if you, machine learning might produce some kind of like result, the result that a large language model is always trying to produce is guess what the next token is. What is a normal person going to say in the next thing? And that's why it would hallucinate, is because it would, models previously, they would get really tied to seeming like they're right. In the same way that a person who's trying to seem like they're right is oftentimes saying things that feel like the form of the correct structure of words, but it's not actually meaning anything. That's what large language models are doing. They've made incredible gains on this, and a lot of it's just because of the amount of data that we now have access to. And so now at this point, these models have read every book. It's actually the thing that they're running into now is the fact that we read everything that's ever been written at this point to these models. But our ability of the models to comprehend and understand things, and now we have thinking models that can take multiple steps in thought. It's just getting better and better as time goes on. So that's large language models.
Excellent. Jonathan, do you want to add anything to that piece?
So, yeah, my addition is really not about the technical piece. I consider myself a layman when it comes to AI, self-taught,
And if you
nowhere
use the
near,
microphone just for me.
Yeah, you're supposed to use it.
nowhere near these,
Some of the online people.
these gentlemen up here. But what I think about is how do we use it? It's confusing, it's exciting, it's scary, but what does that mean for us? And I can use an example. We talked about body cameras. So for us and for policing, it's not just the AI, it's really change management. How are we looking at change? How are we looking at instituting all of this? What are the obstacles and what are the things we're going to focus on? So if we looked at body cameras and we said, okay, well, what's the point? Well, a lot of people have complained, Michael Brown, we know all that stuff, we've got all that information down. But really what we're looking at is performance output. We want to know what the police are doing. And it's not just good enough to know what they're doing, you got to know if what they're doing matches what they should be doing. Now that requires us, policing, to have an understanding before we even get to AI. Because AI will help you do wrong fast. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is make sure that what you're doing is right to begin with. AI is the thing that says, before you even think about understanding what ChatGPT is, what's your SOP say? What's your policies on anything? How do you stop cars where you are? How do you do a DV? If you don't have those things, the things that will become that knowledge base for an AI to use, then you're wasting your time and you're actually gonna be going backwards. You're going wrong in the wrong direction or in the right direction really, really, really fast. Go back to the point of LLMs and all these things are wonderful, but they're not the point. Your understanding of what's going on, your personnel, your staff, their performance, how you support that, that's really the point. This is just another tool. It's a tremendous tool. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna, by leaps and bounds, you're gonna head in one direction or you're gonna head in the other direction by leaps and bounds. If you allow people to use it without policy, without guidance, without an understanding, they're gonna make tons of mistakes. It's gonna embarrass you. It's gonna be all kinds of bad things that are gonna happen. But I think our discussion is, what is this and how do we use it? Forget about understanding it completely, but how do we use it? What are the things that we need to make better? Body cameras, report writing, we need to make that better, and how does this do it? That's the mindset that I'm always in. It is wonderful. Do I need it? And if I do, how does it make me better? There's a phrase, and forgive the language, it's badass. Our goal, the goal of any tool is to make you better. That's it. It's to make you a badass. It's to make you a badass administrator, a badass cop, a badass investigator, a badass detective. And if we're not doing it, if we're not making you better, at the very least, we ought to make you understand more. So if we're not training you to understand, and we're not training you to perform better, then that thing is a waste of time. To know it, just to know it, sounds like something you should do on your personal time. If you want to know it to figure this out, look at the problems that you're having and deconstruct them and work backwards. And then that's where the focus will be, to me, on where you should implement these types of tools.
Do you see an issue or a challenge? I just want to follow up with one piece that you're talking about. Do you see an issue or challenge where you have agencies that might have very well-constructed policies or not, and the culture of the agency and their operations are totally different than the policies they have? Is that problem further exacerbated than when using AI technologies? If the AI model is learning and consuming policy documents as a fundamental kind of underpinning for what should be occurring, do you see the potential for this to be more challenging?
So I noticed that everyone chuckled because I think he's talking about every organization where we have the policy and we don't do what the policy says, which is better. You're better off not having a policy than a policy that you don't follow. We all know that. So culture is really what we're talking about. What's the culture for change? Will the leadership accept this? Will they support it? Will they push it? If you all as leaders don't push it, or if you give this is all BS and I don't know why we're doing this and it's kind of good, well, then your supporters more than likely are going to follow you or hide from you. So we don't want we don't want them to hide from you. Culture is extremely important. It's important to know how you're going to build this in, and your staff, your personnel don't want anything thrown at them. They want, Malcolm Knowles has a concept called andragogy, and it's kind of how adults learn. And what it says is that you need to consider that they want to be a part of the solution. So consider their experience. Let them in on what you're talking about. Have representatives from the union and from narcotics and from the DB and from juvenile, have them there, because each one of those places has a specific problem that this thing needs to solve. You are now solving the adoption problem. You're not really solving the AI problem. And you're bringing all of these people in because you want to adopt this thing because you know the benefits.
Thank you. Thanks to the audience that are submitting questions. We will get to those. And for those in person, please feel free to write down questions, and I'll make sure we leave plenty of time at the end to those, to address those. Captain Smith, I want to come to you to talk a little bit about, from a leadership perspective within agencies, things that departments should be thinking of as they're considering adopting generative AI tools. What are some of the considerations that agencies should be preparing for?
Sure, I think there's a number of things, but primarily is what are you looking for it to do for you? Are you trying to have it, what type of problem are you looking for it to help solve or create a fix for? Or just to use to leverage things you're currently doing now? That's something you need to evaluate. And then as you roll it out, I think it's really important that as you have successes, that you champion those successes and share them around your organization with certain work groups to help get buy-in to use whatever's working. Throughout the course of work, I've been involved with either on an implementation side or a rollout of a number of different products in the city where I worked. And so the ones that we did a good job doing that with, whether I was involved on the front end or the back end, it seemed to get a lot more buy-in easily. Some things are exciting. Drones are exciting. Using those tools is exciting. The mobile field force gets a new 40mm grenade launcher, and they think that's cool, and they want to use it, of course. So those tools and toys that people get are cool, but really champion their successes. And then if you don't do that, it's hard to show after the fact. I think the rollout is really critical. And then trying to determine what problem you're trying to solve or how you're trying to use this technology to be more successful. And then having the right people to do that. And sometimes that creates challenges within your organization because of rules or what it's like to try and get. Like, I want to use this officer because they're really experienced. They were a pilot before they were a cop. And I want them to fly a drone because they really understand it. They're really excited. Or are they eligible to do it? Are there rules that prohibit you from using this person? Can I pick? Do I have to put it out and have everybody put in? And, do you get into that? So some of those things will really dictate that as well and constrain some of your ability to make those choices quickly if you have a process that you have to navigate. So trying to get an idea, about that before you start to. And how can we roll this out? Do we have a good plan to roll it out? And then do we have the right people in the places that are going to champion the technology we're trying to move? And are they going to be successful? So those are the things that we face. And I think historically we've done it right and wrong over the years. And I've seen some successes and sadly some that weren't as successful.
Thank you, Jonathan. Coming back to you, from your perspective, not only as chief, but also as business manager for the jurisdictions that you've been in, from your leadership perspective, how do you decide whether a new technology is worth investing in? What data or voices do you listen to in making that? Right now, there's a million different things that are out there. How do you make those decisions as a public safety executive and make hopefully good decisions?
So I don't make the decisions, and I'm gonna explain why. What I do is I find the people. I believe in something that's called a dual track. And the dual track means that it's our responsibility as leadership to solve the problems, obviously, but to also develop the people. And when you do that, you develop the people and they solve the problems. And then also the problems that you're solving develop the people. So it's this circuitous thing that if you have the understanding of using the people and then giving them the autonomy. For example, if I put a group together of everyone in here and we start solving problems and then I say, okay, wonderful, I've got all these recommendations, but I tell you what, I don't like any of those. I'm just gonna go with what I think is right. You will never give me any more input again. And that's what happens in our organizations. So what I do is I look at it, and I'm not the only one, I learned this certainly from some leaders that I work with, is we get the people together and we ask the right questions. So what's the problem we're trying to solve, which is always the first thing. What are we trying to solve here? Okay, well, what do we need to do? What's the research that you've done? Cops are inherently conservative with their energy. So
Really
That sounds
diplomatic.
so they try not to expend too much energy, and what do you get them out of that? Part of the learning process is working hard to discover, because you learn what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and invariably, you also learn this principle that I think is so invaluable, which is no one is coming to save you. You all have people in your organization right now who can solve these problems if you give them the opportunity and you give them support, and you have this one principle that is so hard to have, which is patience. If you can have patience with yourself and have patience with them, you will take a problem, you will attach it to people, they will come up with a solution, and then you can recreate that over and over and over and over again. That's another part of culture. So mastering that, mastering the understanding that I want our people to know that we believe in them. One of the examples that I did was when we were building some of our AI stuff, we went to several different agencies. And we also had several different vendors come in. And we would ask them questions: what are you doing? How are you doing this? And what are you showing? And then at the end of it, we would debrief. But we wouldn't debrief necessarily on how much do we want to pay, is this valuable? We would debrief on, what do you think about that product? How do you think about their knowledge of what's going on? What do you think about their knowledge of understanding about what we were going through? And every single time it was the same. Well, they're just salesmen trying to sell us something. That was the end result. Unless you've been there, done there, brought them in, had them a part of that. Now these officers who said those are salesmen can go to a vendor and say, here's what we're dealing with. Do you have anything for that? And if they don't, they can think about trying to create something or work along with the vendor to create that. AI is wonderful because it allows you to learn at your own pace. You don't have to have a PhD to figure it out. You have people that are energetic, that want job enlargement, that want to do more things. Pick an easy problem. Give them something like the report writing tool or the body worn camera tool, and let them pilot it and come up with recommendations or suggestions. I'm sure the guys who created those tools are going to appreciate it, because the market determines value, not the vendors.
Daniel, we are now in the year 2030 or 2035. You can pick the year in the future. What do you think is going to be routine in departments that is novel today?
I think that.
Related to this topic, of course.
Yeah. You could go on a lot of things. Obviously I work in AI, and but also it's the most burgeoning thing. I think it's a lot of things are done right now that are done with human knowledge that are a waste of time. So like obviously report writing. So report writing should be report reviewing, and at that point it clearly will be. I think that a big change is going to be moving compute to the edge, and so you'll have devices on you that can do AI on your chest instead of needing to go to the cloud, and that's going to be radically different. I think no longer you won't be calling in to run people out. The idea that you have a body camera on your chest and it's just it's like a flip phone now. It's like it does one thing. It's such a waste of technology. You have a battery on your chest. It's literally the only AI wearable that will ever work as a product, because you already have it, and you should be able to ask it to run out a plate. You should be able to ask it to run out, a suspect, and you shouldn't be bothered. I think a lot of dispatch work is going to be offloaded to this kind of technology. The voice agents are getting insanely better every few months, and so by the time we come around to 2030, I think most of the work that police officers do will be the actual stuff that they imagined when they signed up to be a police officer. I think the going through tons of evidence, digital evidence, stuff like that will be much faster. I think most of the administrative work will be gone. I basically foresee only wins for policing. Policing is funny because I think it's going to be the last job on earth. People talk about AI replacing people. I think the last thing we ever do for AI is hand it a gun and tell it to point it at civilians. And so I think policing will be the last job on earth, and everything that you don't like about policing will go away around it. So I think for police, it's very exciting.
What about some of the other public safety domains? Fire service, EMS. corrections?
All of them.
Where are the impacts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same stuff, and it's so funny because it's like the reality is there's a saying by Paul Graham, who's the founder of Y Combinator, that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. We're here talking about AI doing your paperwork, and I still work with a lot of agencies where the way they communicate, like with their EMS, is through triplicate like forms. It's like a lot of this technology is insanely set back at a lot of places. So it's very easy for me to predict all that will disappear. Obviously, it will probably disappear at some really, really advanced agencies, right? By 2030, right? Like places like Chula Vista and stuff like that will have this kind of stuff like really down. But yeah, it's all the same stuff. I mean, it's a ton of admin work. There's also a lot of, and there's sensitivity around this. So in the field recognition, in the field use of computer vision, there's a lot of sensitivity around this, and I think there's a lot of reasonable conversations to have with privacy advocates. I do think that in the future, officers will have a bug in their ear telling them things that their body cam is seeing. Giving them a heads up on something, highlighting inconsistencies, telling them policies, things like that. I think that's inevitable, and I think that will be, because it's less sensitive, it will be fast forwarded in firefighting. It'll be fast forwarded in EMS. The ability to see what the person is seeing and relay information from like an infinite God mind, that's too valuable to give up. So people in this room might be a little bit held back on it, but I think the other first responder roles you mentioned, they will get really, really cool technology on that front.
Absolutely, thank you. We're going to pivot to questions in about 5 minutes here, so please, for those online, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm already seeing some pop in here, and we will get to them shortly. Talk to us, and this is questions to whoever would like to address it, but how AI technologies could potentially address situational awareness during unfolding crises like active shooters, natural disasters, mass protests, and how can we also at the same time manage the risk against over-reliance on the technological viewpoint? That's not a simple question, but someone who would like to volunteer for it, or else I am certainly happy to take us on.
I'll take a stab at it and quickly hand the mic off.
Yeah.
So it really starts with problems. If you have the ability to understand and identify the problem, then we can work backwards and find a solution. So as we talk about active shooter, what are the problems in active shooter? Communication is always the issue, without fail. Reunification, we got communication between teams. So what we have practiced with and we're still working on, one of the things is we're using VR technology mixed in with a little bit of AI to create digital twins of the schools. And we have those now. Because how many times have you said, we're gonna take all our kids and all our cops and we're gonna run through the school so that they're familiar with it? And then how many times did you actually do it? Everybody, probably never, because it doesn't happen that way. There's backfill, there's shifts, there's school holidays, there's all those things. So what we've done is we were able to get into there, and now we put on literally just a meta headset, and they do what's called site familiarization training. Now that allows them to go through the site and learn the site without ever having to be there. So you may think to yourself, okay, well, how does that help? It helps because think about the last time you went somewhere that you've never gone to before. The first time you went there, you're looking at your GPS, you're wondering if it's there. And then on the way back, did you ever say, wow, it feels like we got back a lot faster than it did for us to get here? Well, yeah, because you knew where you were going. That's the same thing psychologically for responders. If you know where you're going, it's one less decision that they have to make. There's rules about the multitude of decisions that you have to make and how it affects you with your response time. Especially things like, I don't know where the cafeteria is. That's a problem if you don't know where that is. So we go through those type of things, and the inject with AI is we'll build an avatar into it, and you'll come across a security panel, and as they scan, something organic happens. It lights up, and then the avatar says, this is the security panel. It's the accommodation is 1, 2, 3, 4. It allows you to do this, this, and this. That organic level of instruction for the officer right then when they're calm, it sticks into their head. It's just one great example of how we're using all of this technology and AI to improve those responses, but not the way that we think. They're not running out there with guns. They're not trying to kill them. They're doing all the things, those pre-incident indicators that lead up to that. Do you know how to do this? Do you understand triage? Do you understand how to create warm zones and cold zones? That knowledge before I'm running with my gun to go take down the shooter, that's imperative. And if we're skipping that, then we're missing out on a huge opportunity to utilize AI to further enhance learning and move us further and faster.
I want to see if Daniel or Eric want to add on.
That was a great answer. I think you nailed it. Yeah, I think the training is a huge part. I think the access to real-time information, already real-time crime centers, I've toured a few. I see where they could clearly improve. The ability to recognize people who are involved in something, to quickly identify people at a scene, the ability to understand what is their history, what is their problems, that's huge. And I think a lot of that's gonna come down to computer vision, deploying computer vision at the edge, and I do think that's gonna happen over the next few years. So I think there's a lot of things like that that are gonna be just, it's not gonna be like the entire story, but it will be every left and right turn you take, it'll be there to help you with things and to advance you to an answer faster. Obviously, in a lot of situations, that can be life or death. So that's huge.
All right, I want to spend just a couple minutes on transparency, public trust, community engagement around this. To any member of the panel, recommendations, thoughts for the community voice for public safety agencies, whether it's police, fire, EMS, corrections, prosecutors, any one of the different public safety entities, if they're considering adopting technologies, in particular technologies that are formed on generative AI kind of backing, what is their responsibility to engage the community, if any, to do so and to adopt these technologies most effectively?
Sure. Well, I think as it relates to body-worn camera, how forward-facing it is, Public Records Act, people get their hands on the footage, it obviously gets redacted, AI can assist us hugely in that. But as it relates to transparency for the police officers who are responding to calls for service and using this every day, they're trying to do a better job by using this tool to be more effective. And at the end of the day, I think that's the selling pitch that needs to be made to the community where you serve. If there's any concern or pushback over it, we are trying to be more accurate. We're trying to make things better for you, and this is a tool we use to do it. And it's all backed up by the body camera footage as it relates to reports and the things we do responding as first responding officers. I see that's where it's actually an easy win. Over the years of pushing out other technology, we had some gunshot detection technology in the community where I worked. People on neighborhood canvases would not call the police and they would mention it to us. Well, don't you have that thing that tells you? Well, yeah, we do, but did you see anything? And I mean, you would almost chuckle, right? Whereas when we first rolled it out, it was like a big deal. Hey, those sensors are recording us. Like, it's really the unknown. And there's been changes to it over time as it's developed, but the community knew all about it. Like, why are you knocking on my door? Like, well, you knew where to go. You knew what to do. It sent you on the dot, right? So use it, like, when really that was done through a campaign of trying to get buy-in. We actually asked people to put these things on their homes. There were some concerns about it first. It's a little bit different now, the model that's done, but the same concept, there's recording devices in the community. And while there is some pushback, and in some jurisdictions across the US there is some pushback, it's pretty much widely accepted by the communities where we serve. And I think this too will be a tool because the people we serve are using this tool as well. They're either doing it on their social media, they're using AI every day, on their phone, their computer, etc. When they make a phone call to order or ask for something, it's probably being used. So I think getting buy-in from the community is actually going to be easier than getting buy-in from some of our personnel to see how they can leverage this technology because we've been doing it forever and it's always worked before. Well,
I think I've heard that.
maybe. Right? Can it work better? Can we fix a problem we have? So I think that's where we can really get buy-in, and then community members that we have those good relationships with, trying to rally them, whether you have community academies that you host and get people in your organization or those types of people. It's really important with any new tool, and especially one that could be as volatile as this type of technology or concerning to the community.
Jonathan, wondering if you're willing to comment on that as well, just some strategies you've used in the various positions you've held to get community buy-in for technology.
So one of the concerns here is that we were looking at this from the perspective, how do we get buy-in for AI? And, the captain brought up a really great point, and he said, almost, in passing, the ones that you have good relationships with. Well, what he's saying is that long before AI ever came, you should have an established relationships. You should have been doing the things that shows the community that you care about what they're doing, what's going to be affecting them, and you should understand that the community doesn't understand the technology. And and whatever they don't understand, they're gonna make up an answer for, and it's not gonna be the truth, it's not gonna be something that we want. So before we do anything, existing relationships and ongoing relationship building is always important. Food, family, and faith, always your easiest ways to get that done. But then also bringing them in and educating them and saying, hey, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna talk about what this is, what we can do and what we can't do. And sometimes we are not as forthcoming with information that's not secretive, we just don't go out and share, and we really should. My father had a phrase, and he would make me laugh every time he said it. He would say, I know what you know because I was there when I told you. And the point is, I'm not giving you credit for any knowledge that I didn't tell you. That's how we should treat the community, and not in a negative way, certainly not stupid. But if we're bringing out a new technology and we're having issues understanding it, you gotta know that the public is. So the first thing is establish relationships long before you want to do any change, and then use your trusted leaders. A lot of times we go to the clergy, and I can tell you from where I'm sitting, not as big a resource as they used to be. The demographic of the people that are in the churches, specifically in New Jersey, they're not the people that we're literally trying to reach. They're a little bit older, they're more settled, they're up middle class and above. The people we're trying to reach don't traditionally go to church. So now I can't use those people as advocates anymore. I have to find other advocates to use. So that becomes a bit of an issue.
Daniel, from the Bay Area and with other technologists, what is the conversation around this?
Around policing and AI?
Around transparency, public trust building, is it something that?
Oh, it's very dramatic. They're very hysterical about it. I think that the average person is, so it's kind of funny because I live in two worlds. I live in San Francisco. All my friends work at like these foundational labs that make large language models, and many of them are doomers, we call them. People who are like, and I don't know how they get up and go to work every day, but they think they're building Skynet. And they're like, and I think they're way too in the weeds on it. And I, as someone who's like a little bit more zoomed out, I don't like directly work on it, but I obviously talk with them a lot. Their progress is not as good as they think, and it's not going to produce anything like this. But they definitely, there's a large ethical coalition about this, and being upfront with the public and being clear about what's going on. What I see and what we see as a company is that we don't really consider, like to us, like this conversation is really about pulling in people who have to run for elected office, right? Like if we don't consider an agency a fully qualified lead if they haven't had a conversation with their DA about this, right? If they haven't talked at all to anyone in city government that's in the mayor's office or something like this. Usually there's already conversations going on at cities. A lot of times they're very malformed and very misinformed, but there's conversations going on. And so I think usually there's already something going, there's already a conversation, and usually most applications of this technology don't trip the average normal person's like warning wires, unless it's like facial recognition or something like that. When it comes down to people's biometric data, people get weird. But besides that, what we see in the field is that there's not a ton of pushback from the community. Usually the community's biggest problem with the police agency is that they want more officers out in the street. They're complaining about, speeding on 41 or whatever. And so if you can go to them and say, hey, yeah, these guys are spending a third of their time writing reports, we can alleviate that. That's huge. That's all they need to hear.
Thank you. All right, we have a bunch of questions from the audience. I want to start just from any questions in person, then I'll pivot to some of the online questions. We'll start, Kyle, and then we'll go to Charlie, please.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. So just curious about implementation and getting people to actually pick this up. But we were talking a lot about the promise of it, but there's been a lot of promising tech that's pretty basic, that's probably expired in a closet in a lot of police departments. So I'm just curious your sort of perspective on take up in the department.
And just for our online audience, the question is really about adoption of technology. Promising practices are great, but how, kind of what does that uptake look like? And I'll pivot to anyone who wishes to answer.
Was it me? Yeah, sure.
Whoever wants to know.
So we've actually been learning a lot of lessons about this. I got into policing from the victim side. That's what made me interested in the topic. I was never a police officer. I really and I have great narcissism about this, building interfaces that are consumer grade interfaces, really high quality, easy to use software. And I was like, an obvious output of that is that we don't have to train officers. This is not true. Being a police officer, if you do something as a police officer that you're not trained to do, you could go to jail. So a lot of officers are very hesitant to do things that they're not trained to do. And so that's like something that we realized. We had reasonable uptake on our pilots that we were doing with agencies. And then we started like reaching out to officers that weren't using it. And they'd be like, I don't know, I heard this was happening, I got an email about it, I don't really know. And it's just literally going through and showing them our super beautiful and simple interface, which I'm very proud of. But it's a 10-minute, 15-minute training call. This is all the difference, right? And so like, I came to it very tech-brained, being like, oh, we'll build a great thing and they'll use it. And then the reality is you gotta get in there and actually answer their questions, go through it, all the buttons they can click with them and make everyone comfortable. That's been a huge jump for us. The other thing, and I think that we ran into this at Richmond, is finding great initial people to use it, because they'll become advocates within the department. And they actually, there's a process of, at least with this tool, and I'm sure every other tool, but it's the only one I made for police, there's a process of figuring out how to use it that is like, so like DUIs. If you're gonna do a DUI and use Able to write the report, it really helps to verbalize. And the reason for that is because it's 1080p footage and we can't see pupillary movements and things like that. Like it's just impossible. And so if you verbalize things and it's using a language that the suspect doesn't even know, you could verbalize an entire DUI test in front of them and they wouldn't know what you're saying. It will write your report perfectly. If you don't, then it won't write your report perfectly. Figuring things like that out, verbalizing things and stuff like that. Yeah, and so yeah, you're kind of prompting. And seeing that happen at Richmond, with like certain young officers like we talked about who got their hands on the technology, and now there are advocates at Richmond for reaching out to other officers.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to try to do rapid round with questions. Chief Warner, please.
Just really quick, is the key of advancing the technology is knowing the art of possible. Where do we go to see and learn about what's out there today and the future to be able to take advantage?
Great question. So the question is really, where do we learn about what the art of possible is relative to this technology?
ablepolice.com, and that's it. That's the only place to go.
So there's a place that called the Future Policing Institute, and it's a bunch of people from around the country, some people who have various levels of understanding of AI. And but I want to go back to your question about implementation. So here's how I look at it. I am more concerned with the culture of the organization than implementing AI. I'm more concerned about developing personnel, but you can't pass up this tremendous opportunity with AI, because if you get it right, when these officers produce something, there's this buy-in, there's this great feeling, there's this improvement in efficiency, there's all of that. So what do? We sat down with everyone and we said, okay, I want you all to complain. And they looked at me like, are you giving us permission to talk? They're gonna complain anyway. But the point was, problems are not problems. Problems are opportunities. And once we pick the right problem and we solve it, we get to see the most important thing. One, no one's coming to save you. And two, you don't need anybody to save you. You can figure it out yourself. So we have body cameras is one thing. We don't have the body cameras the way that they're doing it. Ours doesn't use AI to look at the video, and I'll explain what it does. It uses AI to collate the KPIs. What does that mean? It means that when your officer is responding to a mental health call, you've already trained that officer on how she should respond. De-escalation, hands-on techniques, who you want to call Mental Health Screening Act, all that stuff's been trained. What you now set up is, when I watch your video, I want to see 5 things. I want to see A, B, C, D, E, whatever. And now I also want the supervisors who are there, and this is a fundamental difference in how we use AI. I want the supervisors to see how you're performing. So for me, in that instance, I'm using AI, but I'm not using AI to watch the video. because I want my bosses to know what Officer Smith does as opposed to what Officer Jones does. Because later on, when someone says Officer Jones does this, I'm gonna say, nah, she doesn't really do that all the time. Maybe you're mistaken. And it helps me as a person. But we look at collating the performance indicators. So we have a system where we look at body camera videos, but it's AI light. We use AI to look at trends. For example, we found that officers with 5 years or less who respond to mental health calls do a much better job at de-escalating, but do a horrible job at tactics. So in other words, they have their hands in their pockets or in their vests. They're communicating with people inside the kitchen. They're sitting in the car talking to suspects. Those things we see all the time, and you all see them too, which is why you're laughing. You're thinking, oh, you must work for my department. No, it's the same stuff everywhere. But we take the AI and we collate those reports because what we're finding is the officer is not the problem. The officer is the result of the problem. The problem is all of us. We say, yeah, but we created the training and you went to the training, so you should know it. Awareness and competency are two totally different things. We do a great job in saying you signed for it. We don't do a wonderful job in saying you know it. So now what we want to say is when we look at AI, we say, well, how well do they know it? Wow, 8 out of 10 officers are getting this wrong. That's not an officer issue, that's an us issue. So we use that, and I'll use one more, so I don't.
Jonathan, I'm gonna jump in. We got 12 questions to get through in 4 minutes.
Understood, I apologize.
So I will double tap the future policing as a great resource, and Chief will follow up with you on that as well. There's other courses through Harvard and through MIT that are specifically designed for public safety applications as well. We can share some of those resources as well. So I want to just get a couple of these questions and we'll address some of them afterwards and release that as well. But what is the receptiveness from prosecutors' perspective on strategies and what are strategies or arguments to mitigate arguments that might come up from the defense? And so I don't know if either Captain Smith or Daniel want to take that. And I'm going to ask to be a very brief response so I can try to get 1 or 2 others.
Sure, the feedback that I received from the DA was actually really positive. What's evidence in court, right? Your body cam footage, your testimony, the report isn't necessarily evidence. When we dictated reports, I didn't write that report either. So really who wrote the report is not an issue, and having that conversation was easy, and we luckily in the county I worked didn't run into any speed bumps.
This is a very complicated question. I'm going to ask her a very simple answer. And this question is for Daniel. If you can talk about the challenges in AI tools' ability to work around poor quality records. So maybe it's distorted audio or bad video. How does that technology work around kind of distorted or poor records?
Yeah, ultimately, if something's compressed to a point that we can't do anything about it, then it's difficult. And so something that we're very upfront with customers about is use of force reports. We're terrible at. And it's because a lot of times the camera ends up against somebody's chest, it ends up in the dirt. That's not gonna be a valuable report. And so there's certain things where it's just like the ability of a sensor to gather the data is poor. Obviously, if you give us terrible audio, that's a terrible situation. The one thing that, there's certain things that are like we have to get right, and one of them is like, so our transcription engine is insane. So we filter out radio, we're great at filtering out wind noise, we're great at filtering out street noise. These are all things that we have to do to get it right. And so obviously there's advances in certain places, but yeah, there's definitely limitations on that front.
Great, thank you. Obviously AI tools have the potential to contribute to new criminal activity that might work against trust in AI itself. How can public safety agency leaders help police personnel and community stakeholders navigate those tensions? Maybe Jonathan, if you're willing.
Briefly, Jonathan.
Briefly. Education, communication is really the key. Understanding it to a point where the organization understands the tool and the likelihood of how it can be misused. And then having the same way we do crime prevention talks for the elderly and talk about scams, we need to start instituting these type of PSAs as well.
Thank you. We are down to the final minute, and for our audience that's in person, once we conclude the virtual webinar, we can continue any questions that you might have for a few additional minutes after. But in 1 sentence or less, what advice would you give to public safety leaders looking to explore generative AI for the first time? I'm going to ask for each of you to provide your input on that, whoever would like to start.
So join an organization and then embrace the dual track.
Get on it now because your officers are already using ChatGPT and it's not CJIS compliant and you have a crisis on your hands.
And yeah, I think it's out there available and there's good options for departments to check it out.
Excellent. This is the beginning of a conversation. Technology alone doesn't make communities safer, people do. But with the right tools, right training, and the right leadership, AI can support with more responsive and better public safety systems. Thank you to each of our panelists. If we can give them a round of applause, and we'll make sure that their contact information is available. I want to thank everyone for joining us online. I want to thank everyone in the room, including our National Criminal Justice Command College folks for being here today, and several members of our advisory board for joining. So thank you everyone for tuning in. A copy of this recording will be made available to everyone who registered as well as on our website. We look forward to the next conversation next month on mental health and public safety as well. And so we will now conclude our online recording, and after a brief moment, we'll continue with any questions in person.